Tuesday, and you know what that means. Simon Johnson's deal sheet on The Athletic is out. So we're going to take a look at all of Chelsea's transfer news during the last week, and also find out why Chelsea's silence might actually be our secret weapon. Welcome, Blue Believers, to another episode of the Stamford Sync, where we are syncing up with everything Chelsea FC. And it's quite a text-heavy video we've got today, but there's loads of interesting information in it, so let's go. Right, so Simon Johnson has posted his deal sheet on The Athletic this week pertaining to Chelsea, and we're going to go through it. So, what has happened this week? There have been reports elsewhere about Real Madrid's pursuit of Enzo Fernandez, and that a deal for him to follow Marc Cucurella, who agreed a move to the Bernabeu last week for 51.7 million, is being lined up. Chelsea are not in a rush to get rid of the Argentina international, who they rate highly. While he is not on their not-for-sale list, they value the midfielder at £120 million. There's been no approach to sign him from Real Madrid yet. Under 21 striker Jimmy J Morgan completed a permanent move to West Bromwich Albion, signing a 4-year contract. So yeah, nothing absolutely mind-blowing in this. We all know about the Enzo Fernandez thing. There are some other reports coming out. One of you guys mentioned in my comments yesterday that a very well-respected and reputable Spanish journalist has said that supposedly Real Madrid are looking at Enzo Fernandez as he plays at the World Cup, and if he has a good World Cup, maybe they'll sign him then. There are so many little details coming out all of the time, and some of them conflicting with each other about the Enzo Fernandez stuff at the moment, but for me, based on how quickly the Marc Cucurella thing happened, when Real Madrid have made their decision, I think it will just happen. Jimmy J Morgan obviously never made it into the Chelsea first team, but good luck to him on his new journey at West Bromwich Albion. So what do Chelsea need to prioritise? Chelsea are not involved in European competition this season, so the task of keeping all players happy is a lot harder. Chelsea have also attracted negative scrutiny in recent pre-seasons over how players with no future at Stamford Bridge, often referred by those outside of the club as the bomb squad, have been treated. The World Cup does not help matters because it has put a lot of transfer business on hold, in general, not just at Chelsea. Some decisions on who stays and who goes will also have to wait until Xabi Alonso gets to work with individuals in pre-season and gets a chance to assess what they can do. But the sooner those who are not part of the plans are sold, the better. It will also provide welcome revenue for Chelsea, who have been good sellers over the years, which can be reinvested in their main targets to strengthen the first team. So I think just one thing in there that's really important is we absolutely need to avoid another bomb squad, don't we? Like, it's so important that the bomb squad is over. I think technically the only bomb squad player really left that was in it is David Datro Fofana, who I don't think we've managed to sell yet. And obviously, Axel Disasi as well. Axel Disasi, I'm pretty sure, will find his move, and, you know, another year on, his value's not going to be as high, so it'll be a little bit easier to sell. But we don't want any more Ben Chilwell situations, Raheem Sterling situations. Because we're not in Europe, we're not going to need as big a squad. We absolutely need to cut it down to the minimum that Xabi Alonso needs to work with, rather than worrying about having all of these players hanging around the dressing rooms, causing bad vibes. So the other thing that's interesting here is something I'm going to get onto a little bit later. We're not making loads of transfers at the moment, or any transfers at the moment. We've sold Jimmy J Morgan, we've sold Marc Cucurella, and we've released 4 academy prospects, essentially. So the window has started slowly, and I know for a lot of Chelsea fans that's making us hyperventilate a little bit because the squad needs addressing. Absolutely it does. But at the same time, the two things to consider are A, the World Cup, which as it goes on, more teams will be eliminated. That will open up opportunities for more players to start making moves. And B, the fact that Xabi Alonso hasn't had an opportunity to get in and start training with some of these guys yet as well. So he, at the end of the day, July the 1st is when Xabi Alonso starts training with the team. From that day, there will be 2 months until the end of the window, right? So I don't think we need to panic. Like I say, I'm going to get into this a little bit more later with a really interesting article that was on Cy Phillips' Substack. But for the moment, things are obviously moving the way they're supposed to. So let's just try to keep our hats on and not go wild about it. And guys, if you've made it this far into today's episode of the Stamford Sync, please do me the distinct honour of liking and sharing the video, subscribe to the channel, or just roast me in the comments, whatever gets you through your day. Right, so we continue with the deal sheet. Simon Johnson next said, what positions/players are they looking at? And this is the meaty stuff. Chelsea want a minimum of 2 ready-made players with experience of playing in top 5 European leagues. The club will add a centre-back, and Crystal Palace defender Maxence Lacroix is one of the main targets for that position. There are 3 or 4 other names that they are also considering. So I think the 2 ready-made players doesn't consider the players that we're going to lose, right? Because obviously Marc Cucurella, for the most part, needs to be replaced with someone who's a ready-made player. If we sell Enzo Fernandez, which the willy won't he continues, we're going to need to replace him as well. And, other targets have been talked about. Adam Wharton, obviously, I talked about yesterday, and I would really like to see that one, to be honest. But yeah, as far as the two ready-made players that need to come in, we need a centre-back. That's the biggest, absolute, most massive glaring hole in the squad at the moment, and the left-sided attacker. And it's interesting because we say left-sided attacker. Is that a number 10 who favours the left side, or is it a winger? Like, we don't know yet. And this is another thing as well, isn't it? Like, the patience that we need to wait for Xabi Alonso to actually get onto the training ground and start working with the players. Nicholas Jackson, for instance, could be an answer to this question, but we just don't know yet. Simon Johnson continued, with 3 years remaining on his contract, Palace are not under pressure to cash in, but they would consider selling at the right price and are in a reasonably strong negotiating position. They would need to find a replacement before allowing Lacroix to leave, especially as they did not sign a centre-back when Marc Guéhi joined Manchester City in January. And look, this here is another small piece of detail, some nuance about why we're not just going in and going nuts for these players, right? And just throwing all the money at them. Because as much as we would like it to be, it's not all just about us. The thing to consider with the market, the Elliot Anderson for 120 mil off the bat, that is stirring things up a little bit, right? For instance, there's already stories about Adam Wharton potentially, Crystal Palace wanting 100 mil for him, but his agent trying to negotiate a lower price. With the market in flux in this way at the moment, a club like Crystal Palace doesn't want to get caught out, because if they sell Lacroix to us for a massive amount of money before they get their replacement, whoever they go to get their replacement goes, well, you just got X amount for Maxence Lacroix, so we think this guy's worth this much. And we've seen some really hyperbolic, massive examples of how this really doesn't always work out well, right? Liverpool sold Fernando Torres to us for 50 mil, which at the time was absolutely crazy, and they spent 35 mil of that on Andy Carroll, who obviously didn't turn out to be exactly the guy for them. Another massive example, Barcelona selling Neymar to PSG for 200 million euros, and then they spent almost all of that, I think it was like 140, 150 million euros on Felipe Coutinho from Liverpool, who also didn't really set the world alight, and they would like not to have spent that much on him. So we live in this world where if any club, selling clubs in particular, sell a player for a lot of money and they go in to buy a ready-made first-team replacement, the club that they're buying from looks at their most recent transfer of the player that they're trying to get and be like, well, you value him at this much, so we are going to ask for almost all of that money for this guy. So it's another reason that it makes sense that these things are happening a little bit more behind the scenes, right? We want a good relationship with Crystal Palace. We don't want to go in and just rip the likes of Maxence Lacroix or even Adam Wharton away from them, which in turn makes it more difficult for them to go out and get their replacement, and they're not in the same sort of situation that we are. Even without Europe, we're one of the richest clubs in the Premier League, and we are able to go out there and spend money on big players. 100% that's probably going to happen, but Crystal Palace, albeit winning trophies a few seasons in a row now, they're still building their way up, and whether they ever get to that level or not, who knows? That's a whole nother question, isn't it? But if we go in and rip players away from clubs like this now, it makes it really difficult for them, which could make negotiating again with them in the future. Like, you've got to think about our relationship with Crystal Palace as well. We like loaning players to Crystal Palace, right? Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Conor Gallagher, Trevor Chalobah. And we sold them Marc Guéhi in the first place. We've got a good relationship, a good transfer relationship with Crystal Palace, and going in, slamming a load of money down for Maxence Lacroix, getting him to agitate for the move because he really wants it, puts Crystal Palace in a difficult position. So we've got to be careful with that kind of thing, and it's another reason, like I say, that we're not just going in head first to try and get these transfers over the line straight away. Another player Chelsea are going to add is a versatile attacker. That is why they have maintained their strong interest in Aston Villa's Morgan Rogers, despite facing strong competition from Arsenal and Paris Saint-Germain. While they have yet to confirm a deal has been agreed, sources in France say that Valentin Barco is going to join from Strasbourg. Chelsea have winger Giovanni Quenda and striker Emmanuel Omega officially completing their moves from Sporting CP and Strasbourg respectively, although a decision on the latter's involvement in 26-27 has yet to be taken. So the Morgan Rogers stuff, look, I'm not going to say it on here. What I am going to do is I'm going to direct you to a video that came out today, this morning. It's a cutout from a podcast that I did with Jay from Talking Chelsea, and we did a 20-minute section at the end of it talking about our hot takes. My hot take is pertaining to Morgan Rogers, so if you want to find out what I had to say about him, go and check that out. But yeah, we've got Valentin Barco, we've got Giovanni Quenda, and we've got Emmanuel Omega coming in. Now, Emmanuel Omega, Before the news, so the story about Emmanuel Omega not necessarily being in the plans for next season only came out quite recently. And before that, interestingly enough, it was quite a small story and it kind of got glossed over, but I did report on it. Supposedly, Emmanuel Omega was potentially subject to loan interest from Crystal Palace. So it's another thing you've got to consider, right? Like I say, I was just talking about the relationship between us and Crystal Palace. And us and clubs in general. It's the same with Real Madrid. Do you know what I mean? It's the same with Real Madrid. Like, you know, as much as the players want to agitate and stuff, it benefits the clubs to have good transfer relationships between each other. So this is another thing. If we don't want Emmanuel Omega to be part of the squad next season, which I think would be a shame because I think he looks like a really interesting proposition, then maybe getting him on a loan to somewhere like a Crystal Palace isn't a bad idea. Goalkeeper Mike Penders, who spent last season on loan at Strasbourg, is going to be given the chance to compete with first choice Rob Sanchez. So this is, again, we know this. Do you know what I mean? We know this. We're not being linked with goalkeepers. I mean, we are being linked with goalkeepers. We were linked to Diogo Costa the other day. Obviously, the Mike Maignan situation is still being talked about. These are goalkeepers that are going to cost in the region of 40 to 50 million pounds. They're going to be expensive. Diogo Costa, I thought he was 30. No, he's actually 26. Really good age for a goalkeeper at such a top level. And Mike Maignan is obviously very experienced, but signed a new deal with AC Milan halfway through last season, even though he wants to leave now. So I have a feeling that the goalkeeper situation is probably going to rumble on until the end of the window, because I think Xabi Alonso comes in and the first thing he does is takes a look at Mike Penders. Well, not the first thing, but maybe the first thing, because it is really important we get this right this season. But yeah, Mike Penders is going to be high on the priority list of figuring out whether he's going to be good for the team or not. Robert Sanchez, also, to be honest, like both of those goalkeepers, Xabi Alonso needs to come in, try them both out, and figure out if the battle is even something worth doing, right? Because if Xabi Alonso comes in and says, Mike Penders' passing ability is absolutely amazing, but he's not ready for the Premier League yet, then he goes out on loan, and we're going to sell Philip Jorgensen. Gaga Slanina looks like he's on his way out. We can't rely on Teddy Sharman-Lowe to be our backup keeper for the season, so we're going to need a first choice, because Rob Sanchez cannot be our only first choice goalkeeper next season. If he can compete for a spot, that's something different. So I have a feeling that the goalkeeper situation is going to be up in the air until the end of the window, and probably right towards the end of the 2 months, when we've had pre-season, when there's been a couple of games under the belt of the club, so we can, kind of see how things are working and stuff. That feels like to me, and there are options on the table at the moment. I'd be surprised if all of them move before the end of the window. Like I said, there's Diogo Costa, there's Mike Maignan, and also there is Robin Roofs of Sunderland as well. So yeah, that's my kind of 2 cents on the goalkeeping situation, but I'd love to know what you think about it in the comments. Right, so which players could be leaving? Chelsea are prepared to sell Fernandes if a club agrees to meet their 120 million price tag. A club. Because like any other club is genuinely going to come in for him. I think PSG is probably the only other one that can really afford him at the moment. One of the strikers, not including João Pedro because he is untouchable, will be sold. Liam Delap is a real contender to be one who goes after a disappointing first season. There is more than one Premier League club keen to buy him. So I talked about this yesterday in yesterday's video. Newcastle and Everton at the moment making noise around Liam Delap. Apparently we want £40 million for him. Seems like the most obvious one at the moment, doesn't he, to be completely honest, just from a profile perspective. Nicholas Jackson, who was on loan at Bayern Munich last season, is another possibility, although he could get a chance at Chelsea now that Enzo Maresca is no longer head coach. Mark Gue is expected to depart on loan or permanently. So the Jackson thing's another interesting one as well. That's one that I can probably see going quite late into the window, but he has committed now that he wants to try and fight for his chance at Chelsea if he can get the opportunity to fight for his chance. It's not about asking for guaranteed minutes, but he said he wants a genuine opportunity to compete for a spot, which is fair enough. The versatility of Nicholas Jackson is one of the things that Xabi Alonso will be interested in, right? Because, a backup to João Pedro as number 9 and also potentially being able to play out on the left wing is a useful skill set to have. He'd score more than 2 goals in 41 appearances, I think it's fair to say, so an upgrade on Liam Delap. But at the end of the day, if Emmanuel Omega comes in and Xabi Alonso absolutely loves him, then I would imagine that would probably be the permutation that would happen. Mark Gue, I would love to see Mark Gue go out on loan. I think if we're going to keep him at Chelsea, we can't keep him at the club next season. Either way, I really think he needs to go out there and get some experience permanently. Unless it's to Strasbourg, I'd be disappointed. He's so young. He's got this real... he's got such an energy about him. Do you know what I mean? And it's one of those with Mark Gue where we've seen this potential in him for a really long time. And obviously, he's got monstrous pressing energy. He can finish. It's just the goal scoring thing. He hasn't quite found his Premier League or Champions League or European goal scoring boots yet. But he's 20 now, 20, 21, something like that. He needs to be going out there and getting game time. It's not going to work for us or for him if he just rots on the bench for another season. Defender Trevor Chalobah is already the subject of inquiries from clubs in England and abroad. He is highly regarded at Chelsea and they are in no rush to sell him. He has 2 years left on his contract, but there is an option for an extra year. So, couple of really interesting things in here. Yesterday we talked about Trevor Chalobah being wanted by Fabregas at Como, and supposedly he'd be open to that move, but the price, the valuation that we're looking for at the moment doesn't really work for them. Could this be another Crystal Palace move? Just saying. They won the Conference League, they're in the Europa League, they had a strong finish to the season in general, and they're looking to lose Maxence Lacroix. So, obviously because we want to take him. So, I don't want to lose Trevor Chalobah. I absolutely don't. But the other interesting thing about this that I didn't know until today is there's an option for an extra year on his contract. So, at the very least, if he does stay, then he could be on a 3-year contract, which would be really interesting. But I've got this feeling that he's going to go, and we'll get into the reasons why in a second. As with other centre-backs, Wesley Fofana, Benoit Badiashile, Tosin Adarabioyo, and Mamadou Sarr, what happens next may depend on whether Chalobah is content to drop down the pecking order when a new centre-back is signed. So this is basically what I was waiting for. And this is the first time I've seen it written down in an article, and I've been talking about this for ages. If you've been watching my channel for a while now, you'll have seen me talk about this loads of times. The issue with Trevor Chalobah, like, as a Chelsea fan, it's easy to go, yeah, keep him, back up, 100% rotational option. But from the individual humanistic person point of view and the sportsmanship point of view, Trevor Chalobah has been the starting centre-back for Chelsea for the last 18 months, and he was a starting centre-back for Crystal Palace for the 6 months before that as well. He's grown into a proper Premier League defender now. Is he the level we need in our first team? Unfortunately, no, I don't think so. And this is the reason we need to go. Like, it's not a secret. Do you know what I mean? We can have a chat about Trevor Chalobah in the comments and whether he's good enough to be the first choice Chelsea defender, like centre-back. But for me, he's not really there. I would love to have someone of his quality as a rotational option or as a backup or injury cover. But that's really selfish, isn't it, at the end of the day? The truth of the fact is, and some of you guys have said in the comments, but Trevor Chalobah bleeds blue and he'll do anything for Chelsea. And it's like, yeah, I agree with that. He's an academy player. He fought to stay at the club, and he's had 18 months as our first choice. And it's not just Blueco want to sell him because he's pure profit. That's obviously a massive part of it, don't get me wrong. But at the same time, we all, for the most part, still think that we need another centre-back, don't we? So I think most Chelsea fans would unanimously agree, that Trevor Chalobah is not the top level that we need to partner Levi Colwill, right? And for me, Maxence Lacroix seems like a better option. So what that leaves is Trevor Chalobah having a decision to make in front of him with 2 years left on his deal. Now, I don't know if the extra year is one that the club are able to enact or whether it's something he has to agree to. But either way, if Maxence Lacroix comes in or anyone else, anyone at all who is the level that we need to partner Levi Colwill, then Trevor Chalobah drops down to being a backup. He goes down in the pecking order, like the article says. Individually, as an individual person, as much as he loves Chelsea, does he go, I am happy to go from playing 50 games a season to 20, 25 games a season, 30 games a season? Is he happy to take that drop in his playing time just in order to facilitate more time at Chelsea? And personally, I have a feeling probably not. I think Chalobah would look at his time at Chelsea and been like, okay, I got the opportunity. It's not like we haven't given him the opportunity. He's been in the first team for 18 months, but unfortunately, he's not managed to develop into the player that is good enough for us to be able to say, we're not going in for a first choice centre-back. We're going to get someone to, we're going to bring in more support and get someone to replace Benoit Badiashile or Wesley Fofana or something like that. And at the end of the day, he's going to still want to carry on playing first team football. So I just have this feeling, as much as I would selfishly, I would love to keep Trevor Chalobah, 100% I would. But I have a feeling that he's probably, albeit Chelsea through and through, he's also a professional footballer with a career to think about, and he wants game time. So guys, let me know what you think about the Trevor Chalobah situation. I think it's a really nuanced one in particular, but I am leaning towards Trevor Chalobah is probably going to want to leave, and if he does, there will be zero pushback against it from Blueco because of the pure profit situation, right? I think ultimately, The reason that Chalobah leaves is because we've upgraded our centre-back situation. And that is good in itself. I would be sad to see him go. You know, we love having an academy player in the squad. And he's fought through really difficult times with Blue Coat, trying to force him out over and over again. And he kept on saying, no, I don't want to go anywhere. I want to fight my way into the first team. He's had the opportunity for 18 months. The majority of us don't think he's good enough to be that guy. Therefore, I think it's not best. Like I say, best is keep him, let him be the backup. But if he wants to go and play football in a first team football in a team somewhere else, he's got offers from abroad. He's got offers from in the UK, which we haven't even really seen the links of yet. Maybe Crystal Palace is one of them. I'm not sure, but really, really, really interesting. Let me know what you think. Defender Axel Disasi is already looking for a permanent move after a good loan at West Ham and has interest from Premier League clubs and abroad. Just make it happen. Just get him out. I don't know. I actually like Axel Disasi as a person. I watch him in a few of the social media content videos that Chelsea put out, like when they do challenges and cook together. Like, he's a funny guy. Like, he seems cool. But as a defender, he's just not what we need. And it's just been one of those things now where a redemption arc is not even really on the cards, is it? It's like he's not good enough. There's been issues. He's been in the bomb squad. There's bad feeling around it. The best thing for everyone is just to get him out. And I hope and one of the issues, this isn't even just a Blue Coat Chelsea thing. He was turning down moves at the start of last season, right? Bournemouth, Wolves and West Ham, I think it might have been at the time, all came in for him. He said, no, I only want to go to Europe. Then he spent 6 months on the bench, not even on the bench. Then he spent 6 months training away from the team, and that's going to change your perspective on it, isn't it? So I think the best thing for Axel Disasi, the best thing for the club, the squad, Xabi Alonso, is to get Axel Disasi out, because as this article said earlier, we need to see the end of the bomb squad. Backup goalkeeper Philip Jorgensen has asked to leave and will be sold. Everton have an option to buy winger Tyreek George worth 25 mil as part of a short-term loan deal agreed in February. If they do not opt to trigger it, other clubs are keen to sign the academy graduate. So Philip Jorgensen, I don't expect us to make much money on. We might be able to sell him for 20 mil, which is what we bought him for. He's been here a couple of seasons, so it'll be a minuscule amount. It won't be a loss. But yeah, he absolutely needs to go. I talked a little bit about the goalkeeping situation earlier, and he's just not even really being considered as part of it. Tyreek George, that's just going to be free money. We're going to see a lot of Tyreek Georges, right? We're going to see a lot of Tyreek Georges. It's just, unfortunately, it's part of our selling club model, right? Our selling club model isn't the same as like a Brighton or a Nottingham Forest or a Crystal Palace, where you take one player, like you buy a Moises Caicedo for 3 mil and then you sell him for 100, or you sell an Adam Wharton for 100. Do you know what I mean? Or, obviously like Forest are looking, they paid 30 mil for Elliot Anderson a couple of years ago, and now they're looking at getting 120 mil for him. That's not the kind of selling club that we are. The kind of selling club that we are is going to be little and often with high margin of profit across the board. Tyreek George is going to be one of those. As much as I love seeing academy players get into the team, the likes of Jesse Derry, Genesis Antwi, Kavuma McQueen, Reggie Walsh, like there's almost zero chance that all of these guys get into the first team, right? So giving them opportunities in the first team is just a way to really rack up their value really, really quickly. And if you've got an academy player and he makes 4 appearances in your first team and then you sell him for 10 mil, that's just pure profit on the books, which, there's only so many places in the squad at the end of the day. So, Tyreek George is just going to be another one of those. Conor Gallagher was another one of those. Obviously, when we sold him to Atletico Madrid, Ian Matson, like we see it all the time. Every now and again, you get your big wins, like Mason Mount, for instance, selling him for 70 million to Manchester United. That was a bit of a coup. But in general, that's probably not what we're going to see. It's going to be more stuff like this with Tyreek George. And again, Tyreek George had a hard time at Chelsea, played a lot of striker even though he's a winger, didn't tear up trees at Everton, but there is definitely a player in there. Lots of clubs naturally will be interested in him, so I hope we move him on. I hope he has a good time at his next club too. Another goalkeeper, USMNT international Gabriel Slonina, will be sold or loaned. Striker David Datro Fofana is for sale. Caleb Wiley, Kendry Paez, David Washington and Shim Mayuka are all candidates for loan. So David Datro Fofana was another bomb squad player. We managed to get him out on loan to a second-tier Turkish team, and he didn't really pull up trees there. He had a failed loan at Burnley. Celtic have been interested in him. He will go, not for very much money. He was one of the first strikers that we bought for the young up-and-comers kind of thing, and it's just not worked out for him. Gabriel Slonina, sold or loaned. I would be half interested in a loan, to be honest, because we've just barely seen him play since he's come in. Again, he was one of the first youngsters that Blue Co bought. And then you've got Caleb Wiley, who looks like a decent left back, but he's just been injured so much, like at Watford. He needs an opportunity to go out there and get fit, and would be difficult to sell at the moment. Kendry Paez, what an absolute nightmare we're having with Kendry Paez. The Strasbourg loan, he had a couple of good appearances, but it just never really worked out. And then he went on loan to River Plate, and they've terminated his contract because his attitude stinks. Really difficult one with Kendry Pires at the moment. Loads of you guys in my comments said get him in the under-21s, and I see the logic, but the nuance of that for me is like he's already got an attitude problem. And part of the reason for that is because when we bought him, he was being touted as the equivalent to Esteval Willian. Obviously, Esteval Willian stocks have continued to rise. Kendry Pires have only fallen. So if he's got an attitude problem and if he's not feeling really good in the world of football at the moment, and he's just had a loan terminated, putting him into the under-21s for me doesn't make things better. It makes it worse because you put this kid who thinks he's the next big thing in with our kids, and he's like, what am I doing here? And I think genuinely, I think that could make things worse rather than better, to be honest. So I think if we can find a decent loan for him somewhere, I think with Kendry Pires, it's about getting him underneath the right manager who can give him the time and can knock him down a couple of pegs, but still get the best out of him. Really interesting one. David Washington, I thought we'd sold him. It's so difficult to keep up with all of the Chelsea youngsters that we buy. Do you remember it used to be exciting when we bought youngsters? Every now and again, you buy a load of players and 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 would be a young player and you'd be like, oh, that's exciting. Now it's like there's so many, I can't keep them all in my head. David Washington, I'm not sure where he's been, but again, probably not pulling up trees. So yeah, hope he gets another loan. Shimueka, really interesting. Academy player, absolutely killed it in the academy last year. 17 years old. And he's now at the point where he's too good for the academy. So keeping him in the academy is not a good idea, but also not good enough to get consistent minutes in the first team. He needs to go out and play football, so I hope he gets a good loan. He's maybe one that could find his way into the first team in the future if things go well for him and the loan moves he gets works for him, but it's going to be really interesting to see either way. So that's the end of the deal sheet, guys. That's the end of the deal sheet. Loads of information in there. This video is turning into a bit of a long one, but I think the standout story is probably Maxence Lacroix, isn't it? Just the only kind of solid target that we've continue to hear about at the moment. I'm still holding out hopes for Morgan Rogers personally. Like I said, go and check out the segment from the Talking Chelsea podcast where we did our hot takes and find out my hot take about Morgan Rogers. But that's a really difficult one. I completely understand that. But Maxence Lacroix seems gettable. And also, like I was talking about, I think a really important thing is this relationship with Crystal Palace could be really beneficial for us. So it is the right thing to do, not just to go in and rip him away. If we want to do more business with them, vis-a-vis potentially looking at buying Adam Wharton or sending players their way as well. So the next story we're going to talk about, I got this from the Cy Phillips Sport Substack today and I thought it was absolutely fascinating. I think he's kind of reposted this article or someone else has written an article for his sports stack called The Score. One of the things us as Chelsea fans have been struggling with at the moment is how slow things seem to be moving, and I've obviously kind of prefaced it a few times in this video already. We are seeing Tottenham going out and getting loads of new defenders, really good, top quality Premier League defenders, Senesi, Van Heck, Robertson. They're looking at the likes of Tonali to really bolster their midfield. There's links with Marcus Rashford today. Tottenham are really going all out. Man City are obviously being linked for 120 mil with Elliot Anderson. And, there's about 5 clubs in and around the Premier League that are doing business at the moment. But at the end of the day, it's kind of quiet for everyone. Why this feels scary for us is because we are all hyper aware as Chelsea fans how important this transfer window is, because Xabi Alonso is coming in and because we finished 10th last season, right? And it feels like the reasons for that are pretty obvious. Now, as much as I'm not a fan of Enzo Maresca for the way he acted, and evidently he's just, we've just won the case against Man City and we're getting 20 million euros from them. So that is just laid there in the dirt that Maresca snaked us essentially, but he wasn't wrong about the problems with the squad and the problem with the system that was being used in order to bring players in. Too many market opportunities, right? The likes of Alejandro Garnacho wasn't really a good fit for him or the team. He didn't get the centre-back that he needed. There are, the striking situation, Liam Delap, I know that they'd worked together before, but the more I think about it, I can't really see Maresca being like, get me Liam Delap, I can work with that. But even players like Andre Santos and Yoro Hato, he just didn't use them. Now, that's not to say that they weren't good enough, because even Liam Rosenior showed there was something in there, but like I say, my salient point here is, although I am not a fan of Enzo Maresca because I think he's a bit of a snake, he was right about the squad issues, right? And they are all laid bare for all of us to see. We have got so many centre-backs and we do not want to see any of them on the pitch for the most part. Levi Colwill and to a lesser extent Trevor Chalobah are the only 2 centre-backs for the most part that we are happy to see on the pitch at the moment, but we'd like to see more of Josh Achiampong, of course. But Tosin, Disasi, Benoit Badiashile, Fofana, like we've got so many centre-backs that, you know, just absolutely shouldn't be here at the club, should they? So that's a massive glaring hole. Obviously, the left wing is a glaring hole. Cole Palmer has not been massively on form for a little while. And, you know, yes, injury stuff, but what that has laid bare is our lack of depth in that option. And the striking situation as well. Like, João Pedro has been the only good striker we've had this season. When we had Nicholas Jackson, he was the only good striker we had. We need more competition in these spots. So as a Chelsea fan, we see all these glaring holes and we see these teams around us starting to put their teams together and essentially go out and, you know, look at trying to, you know, Barcelona are going in on it and, you know, they're buying loads of players. There's a lot of stuff happening in Spain. Real Madrid have gone absolutely nuts. We see all of these teams around us and in other leagues really strengthening their squads for next season, and it feels like we're being left behind. But I think the thing to bear in mind, and I'm going to get into the article in a second, the thing to bear in mind is actually we've been really quiet about it, and that might not be a bad thing. So, like I say, I pulled this from the Cy Phillips Sports Substack, and it was written by The Score. After a disastrous, embarrassing season... What a way to start. After a disastrous, embarrassing season where Chelsea finished 10th and didn't even qualify for Europe, it's absolutely vital. New manager Xabi Alonso has a squad capable of comfortably finishing in the Champions League places, 3rd or 4th ideally, and winning a domestic trophy. At the same time, Chelsea have a lot of players we need to move on. In reality, it's most likely too many for one window, at least 10 to 12 from the current squad plus others we've had out on loan. I believe we should be able to move them all by the end of the summer 2027 window, but doing it in one window is very tough. In the past, Chelsea under Clearlake have done a lot of our business publicly, with lots of rumours, links and stories about our targets and transfer activity, but that's not the case this summer. Rightly, in my view, they have decided to keep all of their targets close to their chest. Not even media sources are being told about our targets or any progress on transfer activity until the transfers happen. More on this later. The only exception to this silence seems to be Enzo Fernandez, but it appears the majority of the noise around him is coming from his agent or the Spanish/Real Madrid media as he attempts to get his long-awaited move to Los Blancos. So, and this is 100% true, isn't it? Like, since Blueco have come in, they have gone, what? They love the transfer window. They're like a kid playing Football Manager, like, you know, FIFA Ultimate Team. It's literally been crazy. They're like, we want this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy. And they've really always made a massive point of being very vocal and open and trying to dominate in the transfer window. Little things as well, like Arsenal have been negotiating with Mykhailo Mudryk for absolutely ages, and we just swooped in and got him. And, you know, the Romeo Lavia thing, and we spent ages, you know, on the likes of Enzo Fernandez and Moises Caicedo. Like, it's never been a secret. And this is probably another reason why, as Chelsea fans, we feel a little bit like, oh, I'm not sure about this season, because we've gotten used to this now. It was kind of like that under Roman Abramovich as well, to be honest. Like, maybe not quite as bad as this, but at the same time, as Chelsea fans, we are used to our targets being out there in the open all of the time. So the article continued. My second reason for confidence, David Fallows. This is the data analyst/recruitment guru we hired out of Liverpool. He is a best-in-class operator who's helped build multiple winning squads at big clubs. His expertise is in data analysis. He knows what data to look at and how to analyze it correctly, something we've clearly not done well up until now. This includes information on player mentality, character, and work ethic. So this is such a massive thing that we're not really talking about because we don't see it. Like, I can't even find a picture of this guy. I remember when we hired Dave Fallows, right? Loads of content creators were posting pictures of people and it was never him. It was always someone else. And it was kind of this whole big mystery. But what we do know is Dave Fallows played a really big part in signing a lot of players like Roberto Firmino and Andy Robertson. I think he had a hand in the Mo Salah thing as well for Liverpool, where they weren't really expensive players, but they all turned into world-class operators and all since have gone on to have good careers. Maybe apart from Firmino, I haven't heard much about him for a while. But the Dave Fallows thing is really interesting because we got him halfway through the season when it was still very much Winstanley and Stewart and, you know, Egbali kind of, you know, stomping around, making themselves known and stuff. Dave Fallows kind of came in and we weren't really sure what his kind of position was going to be, but it seems like in this new era where Xabi Alonso is being given more power, Dave Fallows seems to be taking a bit more of a controlling idea on how to analyse players to come into the first team. And the three things that he's really good at are three of the biggest problems that we've had with our players, right? Mentality, character, and work ethic. This goes as far back as the penalty debacle with Nicholas Jackson and Noni Madueke arguing with each other on the pitch, being petulant, right? Look at all of the red cards we've had this season, and as much as I know easily some of them them we can say, yeah, they were unfair. Not all of them were. A lot of them were down to petulance and people arguing with refs to get that first yellow card in the first place. So mentality, character and work ethic is what we're missing from the majority of our squad, and largely as well that can be put down to the fact that we've gone out and bought all of these young talents. We've purely been looking at footballing ability when personality and character is so important. So I think Dave Fallows coming in and really honing in on this specific subset of data is a really interesting factor. For example, at Liverpool, scouts often looked at how often players tracked back and fought for the ball, their body language when the game wasn't going well, and other small but important bits of data when deciding who to sign. And he would have been part of that process. He will ensure we don't end up with any more players with questionable mentality or attitude. I think, for example, Garnacho would not have been signed if Fallows was at the club last summer. So look, this is a really interesting point, isn't it? Like, it's, you know, because there are the two things. There's the footballing ability and there's the mentality side of it. And maybe what should be happening is, okay, cool, Stuart and Winstanley can go out and identify talents because they have sometimes really got it right. Moises Caicedo, João Pedro, Cole Palmer, Marco Correa, Enzo Fernandez. You know, we've got a load of guys that have really good footballing ability. Like, that's just true, isn't it? It's absolutely true. But maybe what Dave Fallows needs to be is the filter. You know, okay, here are 20 guys with amazing footballing ability that fit our model that we'd like to get. And then Dave Fallows comes in and brings it down to, okay, 5 of these guys have the right mentality for the first team. 5 of them have an okay mentality that maybe can be worked on. And then that list gets taken to the next stage of the conversation, right? And this is definitely something that we've been missing because we've just been bringing players in en masse all of the time and not really questioning about their mentality. And, you know, like I say, the red cards, the conceding late in games and not being able to hold on to a lead and stuff like, there's so many reasons why it's really, really evident that mentality has been such a massive thing that's been missing in the squad. And also Xabi Alonso came out and said he wants to find and create mentality monsters as well. So there's as much as we can say we need a centre back, we need a left winger, one of the massive glaring holes we've got in the squad at the moment isn't necessarily about players' technical ability, it's about mentality. And if Dave Fallows can come in and have a really important impact on this, that could be great. So the article continued, another thing I think is in our favour is operating in silence. Although it's annoying at times, I much prefer it. I dislike us doing our business in public. I don't want constant stories about targets we don't get and allowing other clubs to slip in under the radar and gazump us. Do it privately, quietly, only make it public when it's as good as done. Close down false rumours, and if we do miss out, which could happen as we don't have Europe to be honest, fans will probably never know, and we don't look completely embarrassed publicly as we have in the past. Keeping it quiet avoids gossip and lessens the risk of other clubs poaching our targets, and so far not much is leaking out. I think this is a positive development and a small sign of lessons learned. I actually believe it will help us have a better summer. So look, I'm conflicted about it, but I largely agree with this if I'm completely honest. As a content creator, I love a transfer story. It's one of the reasons that I got into being a content creator in the first place, because I love analysing potential targets and seeing where people could fit in. And yeah, sometimes they don't pan out, but I personally really enjoy the ideation side of it all, right? Like looking at how this player could fit in our team. I did a video about how Jan-Paul van Heck could be really good for us the first time we were linked with him. Obviously, he's gone to Tottenham and that didn't happen, but I really enjoyed that video and some of you guys enjoyed that video as well. So from the entertainment standpoint, and as football fans, we love the transfer window for that. But the truth is, after a few years of utter, unmitigated chaos in the transfer window, I think a bit of quiet is probably exactly what we need. And this is one of the reasons why I'm not concerned as well. Like I said at the start of the video, we've got 2 months left. 2 months. We've got ages and ages and ages left, man. We've got such a long time left for us to be able to get the targets that we want. And the truth of the fact is we're only seeing really, really, really small links come out. We are starting to hear about Maxence Lacroix. We are hearing that Chelsea are interested in Morgan Rogers, for instance. When you compare that to how brazen things have been for absolutely ages, like the Michael Olise saga, right? You know, that was nailed on until it wasn't, and he went to Bayern Munich. You know, Xavi Simons was another one, absolutely nailed on until it wasn't. I was convinced that Xavi Simons was going to sign for us. We had everything. Fabrizio Romano talking about it every single day, and then bam, I don't know if we changed our mind or whatever, but he went to Tottenham. And I wasn't, at the end of the day, like, he didn't have an amazing season. So, you know, it doesn't really matter. But at the same time, it's one of those, isn't it? Like, it's not a good look for us, really. And if we are going out and, you know, making all of these targets public, you know, Todd Bowley literally came out, didn't he? And said the reason that we got Marc Cucurella was because Man City were interested in him. So we've literally been a progenitor of the exact thing that is being spoken about here. We got Marc Cucurella because he was a City target. We went and poached their target. We did it with Mykhailo Mudryk. We did it with Romeo Lavia, who was going to Liverpool as well. You know, he'd been talking to Liverpool for absolutely ages. Liverpool tried to do it with us, with Moises Caicedo as well, but we were really lucky. We laid down such good groundwork in that negotiation because they came in with, you know, they matched the money and they were doing better than us at the time. So, you know, easily Moises Caicedo could have ended up at Liverpool. So I think it's smart. Like I say, as a content creator and a football fan, like, I'm a bit like, that's a shame, isn't it? Because I love transfer ideation, right? I love thinking about, how would this player fit and what's our formation going to look like and what can they develop into and how are they going to combine well with other players? Like, it's really fun, but the realism of it for this window in particular, going in quiet is probably a really, really good idea because it just means that we will be more pointed about things when they're going to be done. And hopefully that means we get some surprise announcements that we weren't even sure about. So guys, this video has turned into a bit of a monster. I'm actually really surprised, but there's just been so much to talk about. Even though there's not loads of new news, what I've found with all of these things that I've read today is we're fleshing out the nuance of the situation that we're in, and it's allowing me to look at it in a different way, which is making me more positive for the transfer window. And it's true as well, like the Enzo Fernandez stuff, that isn't coming from us, that's coming from the Spain side of it, right? And I'm probably assuming that any of the other stories that we're hearing about, Maxence Lacroix and Morgan Rogers, probably aren't originating from us either. So it is really interesting to watch Blueco start to adapt and develop based on, and this is the thing as well, isn't it? Like, you know, there's a lot of Blueco haters. I don't think anyone, myself included, is happy with how things have gone under Blueco so far. Obviously, it's been an absolute mess. But at the same time, they came out at the end of last season and said, we're going to go for a period of self-reflection. And this is some evidence to say that that is actually what's happening. They hired Xabi Alonso and they made him the manager. Already, that is taking power away from their sporting directors and giving it to Xabi Alonso. Dave Fallow seems to have a much more important role than the likes of Stuart and Winstanley at the moment. We're not hearing about Egbali, Stuart and Winstanley blasting around all over the world to try and sign these players, which is what has been going on in years past. And we're keeping our business quiet, which is another very different thing from the Blueco era as well. So they are, one way or another, whether it's going to work or not, that isn't, you know, that's not what we're saying at the end of the day. But after this supposed period of self-reflection, I think it is fair to say we can see in how things are going differently at the moment. Like, we'll never be happy as Chelsea fans, will we? Let's be completely honest. At the moment, like, you know, we're like, we're buying all these children and look at all these rubbish players that we've bought. And then as soon as the transfer window opens and we're not hearing anything, now we're all panicking about not being able to bring in the right amount of people or the right guys and not being linked to anyone. There is work going on behind the scenes, 100% there is. And like I say, I found this article on the Cy Phillips Sports Substack really, really interesting because it paints a picture of, actually, this is probably for the best. Nice one, guys. Thanks very much for sticking around until the end of the video. If you did, I will catch up with you all very, very soon. Take it easy. Peace.